Leave your comments on the Ask Reddit sub, and I'll read your answers on the next episode of LWIAR. Serious. How would you react if the US government decided that the American Imperial units will be replaced by the metric system? So you don't realize that they did this in the 70s? The US government went metric back then, but made it voluntary for the rest of us. That's why there are metric units on food. The people rejected it. It's still the official standard. However, I believe in some parts of the country there were speed limit signs posted in metric units. We shot them. America. Here in the UK, the Weights and Measurements Act 1985 forced the use of the metric system for all commercial entities except in some specific circumstances. Pints of beer, for instance. Some rural petrol station owners were even prosecuted for refusing to sell by the litre. The long-term benefit of this is that the nation mostly understands both systems pretty well. Except for the older generation who only use imperial. British people tend to refer to someone's height in feet and inches. Their weight in stone. We use miles for long distances, but yards are barely used for measuring distance. However, inches might be used for small lengths. It's a bit of a mixed bag. I worked in Sweden for about a year and would often reference a measurement in imperial, leaving the confused look on someone's face. Using imperial for any sort of manufacturing is ridiculous though. Well, except for the older generation who only use imperial. My 93-year-old nan always scoffs at this. She always asks in a lovely South Wales accent, who are these idiots who can't work out different numbers? Even after all these years, she thinks those people shouldn't be allowed out the house for their own safety. She's right. The metric system is very simple and makes math much easier. Plus they've had decades to learn it. I think the difficulty people have isn't so much the maths of metric, but more just lacking an inherent understanding of the sizes of the measurements. For example, many people who grew up using miles get an ingrained understanding of roughly how far a mile is. Tell an adult to use a different measurement, like a kilometer, and they struggle to get the same ingrained understanding of how far that is, even if they understand that a kilometer is 1,000 meters. In the Midwest we measure distance in hours. US auto manufacturing could finally embrace the Japanese trend of making every goddamn bolt 10 millimeters. I hate seeing US versus Japan comparisons. US really needs to freaking improve itself. Japan is light years ahead. I'm pretty sure it's streets ahead. Fun fact, most American domestic vehicles are metric already. Yup, that's why I have a dozen 10mm sockets and still can't find them. I'm convinced some engineer somewhere sold his soul to the devil to standardize most bolts to be 10mm, and now the curse is that the sockets seem to vanish. There is definitely a demon somewhere hoarding 10mm. In the UK we like to chop and change to keep things exciting. Short distances, cm, your height, feet brooms, feet and or meters. Long distances, speed, miles per mile per hour, except if you're running 5 to 10k, marathons are still miles pop. Petrol, vodka and other liquids, liter milk and beer pints. Yards on a football pitch keeps you on your toes. Don't forget stone for weight. As someone who lives in America, I never even heard of a stone until I had to submit my weight for a health analysis edit. Typo. Measuring weight in pounds and not stone is like measuring height in inches and not feet. Engineering student, I'd be thrilled. Same. It would be a pain in the machine shop though. Most lathes, drill presses, vertical mills, etc. use thousands of an inch as standard measurements. I'm an American living in Europe, so I'm surrounded by the metric system. If the US changed, I think it would take a lot of effort to change every speed limit sign and road sign in the country, lol, but other than that eventually we'd get used to it. My Google Maps is still set to miles and my weather apps are still set to Fahrenheit. But I can guesstimate if I have to tell someone something in kilometers or Celsius. Don't bother changing them. In the UK we have speed limits in mph, but pretty much everything else is metric. Also pints for proper ale. But our pints are different to US ones. I live in Ireland, and today I'll get to see the road signs change from kilometer to miles as I go up to Derry. Big fan of imperial pints since they're bigger than US pints for whatever reason. Open a shop that converts speedometers. Our speedometers already have kilometer on them, just in smaller lettering than mph. I could finally do 100 on the interstate without fear of getting pulled over. Your 0 to 60 drops massively too. I was going to make a smart-ass remark about metric time, but remembered that it's actually a thing. A second is still a second, but you get to reference time with metric prefixes, suffixes. So next time you're being asked to do something, just say, sure. Just give me a megasecond, and you've bought yourself just over 11 minus 1/2 days. As someone studying to be an engineer, I'd be thrilled. There are a ton of extra conversion factors in Imperial, and it sucks lol. In middle school we all learned how much nicer it is to multiply and divide everything by 10 rather than arbitrary numbers like 12 and 5280, but that's just the beginning of it. Here's an example. In basic kinematics, scientists distinguish between weight and mass. Weight is a force. Mass is a property of an object. Well, in Imperial we use pounds for both quantities, even though they're different quantities. It'd be like using feet to measure force as well as distance. Greater than how long is a piece? Greater than 10 feet, greater than so how much force will it exert? Greater than 5 feet, greater than great. Pretty freaking stupid, right? Just you wait. In SI, weight is mass times gravitational acceleration. Simple, clean, easy. Technically you have to also divide by a constant called gc, but that constant just equals 1. In Imperial, the equation for weight is the same, except gc isn't a dimensionless one. It's 32.17 pound-feet per pound-second squared. What the frick? Yeah, me too. And yes, pound is in both the numerator and the denominator of that unit. But they can't cancel, because the numerator is pound mass and the denominator is pound force. Good times. An upperclassman tell me horror stories about imperial units in electricity and magnetism. Apparently it gets worse lol. I really don't care that it failed in the 70s. The idea that gay people were people failed in the 70s. It's time to switch, and the sooner the better. I wouldn't mind, but I'm like 99% sure there would be riots. Not sure why, just seems like there would be. A small percent of extremely vocal people would protest. They'd show up in the streets with guns and call it socialism. Using metric would be infringing on their freedoms. Somehow, the news would run this for a week or two, pushing nonsense arguments into everyone's faces. Most Americans would be slightly annoyed and confused. A large minority would be happy about it. As non-American one, don't get bothered by your units. I just wonder why you haven't changed them so far. Especially that in science you don't use nano-inches or micro-ounces. You just apply normal metric units. What is the most ridiculous is your date format and Fahrenheit temperature. Nano-inches and micro-ounces, I'm dead. As an engineer, I'd be so happy. 16ths is so freaking stupid. Have you ever tried to do math in it? What's 4 feet 5 and 13/16 divided by 3? Go and try to make a spreadsheet to calculate it. The average person can't. And that's a problem. It's a tragic mashup of base 10, base 12, and base 16 in one stupid freaking system. I have greater than 10 years experience and have made more mistakes over this than I care to admit in public. Edit. And then realize construction workers I'll have to deal with this on a daily basis. And no, whole feet, inches being easily divisible by 2 does not make up fit. In practice, you very rarely have integers. This system costs us. Freaking finally. Thanks for watching LWIAR. The best of recent r/AskReddit submissions and comments. If you like this video, check out LWIAR too. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Bye.